meeting to order.
On Monday.
If I had a gavel, I would be rapping my gavel on the table right now. At the commission meeting, we have the benefit of the gavel. Okay, Karen, we're gonna get started. Take your phone. All right, welcome everyone. I am fairly new to this group, but can we do a quick round robin, just to introduce ourselves, for the benefit of the folks in the room and the folks on the Zoom? So we'll start down here.
Ping Pong Shen, Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office.
Raj Kapal, trustee for Coleraine Township.
Greg Kesterman, Hamilton County Health Commissioner.
County Commissioner Denise Reha.
Tony DePuccio, I'm on the District Policy Committee as the Waste Generator Representative.
Susan Schumacher,
Pierce Gritter, student representative.
Sue Magnus, Representative of the City of Cincinnati.
And Bob Gettert, the Public Representative.
Karen Hurley, Citizen Representative.
And Larry Riddle, I'm the waste industry rep.
Great, thank you. Pierce, I just really wanted you to introduce yourself. So that all worked out. All right, very good. We'll move then to clerk's report, and approval of the minutes. Have we all had time to review the minutes? Are there any additions, deletions? In that case, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I abstained because I was absent from the
Very good, noted. Bob abstained. All right, very good, thank you for that. We've redone the agenda a little bit. Generally, public comment, is up towards the top of, agendas in order for the public to make their comments, and then if they so choose, leave or stay. So we don't want to have people hanging around for the whole meeting and then have the opportunity for public comment. So we've moved that up to the top of the agenda. So I do have some speakers cards. And Michelle, do you have anything to add before we go into public comment?
No, just really quickly want to apologize that I am doing this over Zoom. COVID has been going through my family. So luckily I've tested negative twice, but so my vaccine's doing its job, but I just want to make sure I protect all you. So that's why I'm here over Zoom. But I will monitor to see if we have any public comments on the Zoom side.
Very good, thank you. And no offense, but we're glad you're at home. I mean, Greg and I had a briefing today talking about just a slight uptick. I don't want to get into it, but anyway, we got a slight uptick of COVID cases in the county. So good to be careful. All right, let's go to our speakers card. So Tim Mara is our first speaker.
And Commissioner Dreehouse,
Yes.
we'll have a timer and an
Okay.
audible sound for the 2 minutes as well.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
Welcome.
My name is Tim Mara, and by background in education, I'm a planner. And one of the acronyms we use in planning is called LULU. That stands for Locally Unwanted Land Use. If there ever was a LULU, it's a landfill. It's a LULU of LULUs. And the reason people don't like being near landfills is because it affects your quality of life. It's hard to enjoy your home when you smell the nearby landfill. It's hard to market your home for resale if people come to look at it and they smell the landfill. In Oxbow's case, we have invested millions of dollars to acquire a large nature preserve that rivals in size the larger county parks and city parks in this area. We don't want that to be impacted by compromising our water quality. People come to look at the wildlife. We have over 200 species of birds that either live in the Oxbow or come to the Oxbow as they migrate north and south seasonally. Water quality is critical to the enjoyment of the Oxbow. The rules that you are considering are important to residents and to the environment. They give us an extra layer of protection from LULUs of this particular kind. It's not stopping them, it's giving an extra layer of review, which I think is important in citing a landfill. The timing of adoption rules is critical. February 19th of this year, Rumpke sought OEPA approval for this landfill expansion as a mere alteration. And they said, no, you can't do that. It's a larger thing. It's a modification. You need to file a formal permit and go through the entire process of citizen participation. But they can apply any day. They control when they apply. It's important that you adopt the rules immediately or soon if you want to have them apply to the application. If you don't do it before they apply, they could argue that they don't apply to their permit application. Thank you.
Thank you. That's quite the sound back there. I don't know where that came from, but good heavens.
Commissioner, could I ask one
Yes.
question? Tim, I know I asked you this question before, but are you here officially representing Oxbow? I think you're on the board.
I'm a member of the board of directors of Oxbow.
Okay,
So, Dr. Seymour, the president of Oxbow, can't be at these meetings, so he asked me to come and to, explain why we're concerned.
Thank you.
okay, thank you.
All right, our next speaker is Carrie Davis.
Thank you for changing this up a little bit. I just want to expand a little bit on what Tim said. It's really not about Rumpke. Rumpke does, you know, run all over the county, and that's, they're impacted, but, Waste Management has permits pending, permits that are being, renewed. So it's not an issue of just about Rumpke and Bond Road. Bond Road's important because we don't want to start another problem when we already have a problem we can't handle. And so, as a resident of Colerain Township, who's been dealing with Rumpke and the good things about them and the bad, it's not just about Rumpke. We have so much going on all over Hamilton County that we need to pass these rules now and get ahead of the game so all the landfill operators and solid waste facility managers have advance notice, because you don't want to put something on people at the last minute. So I think it is imperative that we proceed expeditiously, now that we've identified our powers and authority.
Thank you. And our last speaker is Kurt Grossman.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioner,
Good afternoon.
Board. My name is Kurt Grossman. I'm a taxpayer and citizen in Cincinnati and Hamilton County. I get to vote for you. I didn't get elected, but I tried. I'm here mostly just to encourage you not to fail in what you need to do to protect all of us. I don't live near a landfill. I live downtown. But the way the laws are set up today, any waste management company could demand the right to set up a landfill anywhere in this county, and you wouldn't be able to stop them. They could do one on Fountain Square if they wanted to, and you couldn't stop them. You need to change and have rules, but by statute allow you to govern the maintenance, protection, and use of solid waste collection, storage, disposal, transfer, and various other facilities. You have not done that. You've had the ability to do that in the statute for years. I'd like to pass around a proposed set of rules. I don't have enough for everybody, because I thought there'd be 5 members here. But I think it's important to have rules so that there is a body beyond just the minimum standards of the EPA to be sure that we protect our community. Rumpke's a good neighbor. They want to be a good neighbor, but as was pointed out, they're not the only player in all this. There are others, and anybody could do this any minute, and you couldn't stop them. You need to have the controls to stop them, as other counties have done. In fact, they're dumping all their waste here because they have rules to protect their communities. But we don't have to. We don't even have a rule as simple as requiring them to tarp over an open landfill at night when all the smells come up and they're not running back and forth to keep the smells down. We don't have that. Franklin County does. Why don't we? It's simple things like that, and things that are not harmful to the operation of a landfill and the business that does that, but they're helpful to all of us and keep us safer and more comfortable and restrict where things can go so we don't have these things literally living on top of us throughout the county. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's move on through our agenda.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, we have public comment on Zoom?
So if anyone on Zoom has a public comment, I've provided, in the comment section to raise your hand and provide your information, and that would be that time. Looks like we do not have it.
Okay.
Uh,
Yes.
Yeah, Commissioner, just a comment, not expecting an answer, but I've served in many other communities where public comment is anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes instead of 2 minutes. So a consideration in the future, if it's possible, to have more time for public comment than the short 2 minutes. But I just wish to make that comment.
Okay.
But not asking for action at this time.
Yeah, we did mirror it against the county commissioners
Yes.
meetings, and so we do a 2-minute.
Yes,
I also was in the legislature where there are no limits at all,
yeah.
so maybe there is a, right? It did make for some long meetings. We would meet until 1 o'clock in the morning sometimes anyway. But yes, duly noted, and we'll take that under consideration. Thank you, appreciate that. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the resource revenue update analysis. Michelle, I assume you're gonna do this?
Yes, I can just provide a quick overview. So we did see over 2020 about $114,000 increase in revenue. Not a huge percentage jump, but a jump over 2020.
All right, any questions or comments related to that report? Everybody had a chance to look at it? Okay. All right, very good. Thank you, Michelle. We are gonna move on to policy committee items, the rules subcommittee update. I don't know. if you're
Yeah,
gonna
I'll give
do
a
that. Okay.
very quick, make it short. So, as you know,
Excuse me, Tom,
the Board of County Commissioners,
could I ask, if when people are speaking, could they take their masks off? It's really hard to get,
We're gonna ask the health commissioner.
I would say it's not advisable. Right now in public locations, COVID is spreading and there's a lot of people in this room.
okay.
so I'll speak up. So the Commissioner, as you know, the Board of County Commissioners did approve hiring outside legal counsel for the subcommittee. It's my understanding that that is either, the authorization was provided that a contract is either completed or very near so completed. So, I think our anticipation is that contract will be in place probably by the end of this week, maybe a little sooner than that. So, one request that I think is good for the subcommittee, and we have to come back to the policy committee for this request, is that they would, the policy committee would okay for the subcommittee to engage the outside legal counsel. I think we're kind of past that, but also to have staff engage with legal counsel to determine the authority that the policy committee has, so that we can continue to move ahead with looking at the assessment on rules. And so I guess that's probably a request. It is a request, and I'll make that a motion if we need to ask the policy committee's permission to have the staff get more engaged with us, but also engage with outside legal counsel to give us some direction on legal authority.
Tony, I got a
relative to the rules.
question. So what is the expectation of the subcommittees? What they're going to do? They're going to do the finding, recommendations, or what is the target date to present this to the policy committee?
Yeah, Raj, I don't believe you were here last time, and so, if you look back on the, meeting minutes, the subcommittee was charged with doing a couple of
Right.
things, and potentially some things. First thing really was to do an assessment as to whether any additional rules or regulations are needed, and then based upon that assessment, then come back to the policy committee, give them assessment on that, get some further direction from the policy committee as that, depending on what the subcommittee's recommendations were, as to whether we proceed ahead with potentially, coming up with rules and regulations specific to the, Hamilton County's solid waste district.
Good. So you're expecting probably the next meeting, you will come up with some kind of recommendations, subcommittees?
Well, no, that's not my expectations. We have, we've only had 2 meetings, and we've only scratched the surface as far as I'm concerned on educating ourselves about what the existing framework is out there for all of these solid waste facilities. So we had, I don't want to get into all the details on this, but, you know, we had a presentation by Ohio EPA on solid waste, planning. We had a presentation from MSD on, how leachate specifically from the, used roadside is handled. That's not real specific to what we're doing in terms of the MSD, but it gives us a sense as to how MSD regulates leachate from landfills in Hamilton County.
Okay. Donna, do you have from the other committee members?
Yeah, also from the Rules Committee, in addition, and with no disrespect to Tony, we did submit some rules that we have developed.
I'd like to clarify that.
Yeah.
You submitted rules.
Yes,
I never saw those until a couple hours, literally, before the subcommittee meeting.
it's true, it's true. And
I didn't agree to that. You threw them across the table, and so it was determined that we had to put them in the record, but there's been no acceptance by the subcommittee on those.
with that, the rules have been submitted. They have not been adopted. They have been submitted. And, I do have, some rules that I wish to propose, for consideration. And, there was a discussion at the Rules, Subcommittee as to the, purpose of the Rules Committee. Was it to just simply do research, or was it to develop rules? And, two of the three members believe that the purpose of the committee was to develop rules and bring them forward to the Policy Committee. We do not believe that the Rules Subcommittee has the power to adopt rules, but rather to develop rules and bring them to the Policy Committee for consideration. If the Policy Committee adopts those rules, and they can then be forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners for their consideration, recognizing that any rules need legal review. And that's our understanding of the process. I do have a set of draft rules that have not been legally reviewed, and I would like to have that presented to the Policy Committee if that's possible. It is not a uniform opinion of the Rules Committee, but it is an opinion of two of the three members of the Rules Committee. And we feel it's based on good research. 95% of the language of these rules come from Warren County Solid Waste District's district plan, which has been and these rules have been in effect since 1994. And so we feel like these rules are pretty solid. Of course, they have not been reviewed by our legal counsel, and Michelle is hiring an attorney and this would be directed to that attorney for legal review. So there's two paths that I present from Sue Magnus and myself, the two members of the Policy Committee, that we can ask that the rules be submitted for legal review, and that a subcommittee meeting can take place just shortly after Thanksgiving to discuss these rules and make a decision to present to a Policy Committee meeting that's shortly in the first 2 weeks of December, and pass these on to the county commissioners if they're satisfied by and approved and adopted by the Policy Committee on a fast track. Or a second pathway would be for the Policy Committee to accept these rules in today's meeting on a motion. And I present those two thoughts to the Policy Committee today.
Bob, may I ask, my team has not seen those rules. I have two members on the technical committee. Have your proposed rules been discussed with the technical committee first? And then secondly, I know the gentleman today presented a new set of rules, and I know Ms. Davis at one point presented a set of rules, and another woman on the technical committee has presented a set of rules. So I know of at least 4 sets of rules. Has the technical committee reviewed those 4 sets of rules and provided a recommendation as to which set of rules or which pieces from those rules make sense?
The only set of rules that I have in possession that I am presenting are these rules right here that I have presented to Michelle for legal review. It is not the other rules that you have referenced.
I believe that these are more complete and more ready for legal review because they come from a district plan that has been in existence for a long time, and they are more complete because they have the full package that is needed, and they meet the needs for public standing, the public standing for review of any submittal of modification and presentation of any type of landfill or solid waste facility modification.
I would just say, my personal concern is if we have 4 sets of rules and everyone hasn't had a chance to read them, that presents a concern for me personally. And I just wanted to address, the motion that was made. I do actually think in the original, minutes, it authorizes your committee to give a legal opinion. I specifically brought that up because it's important to me to know what legal bounds we have and then what will the ramifications of those be. I mean, if we're gonna create rules and tomorrow we're gonna get sued and lose, I'd at least like to know that. I'm in favor of rules, but I think we just need to know the boundaries.
Yeah. And I understand, I wish we had time to further deliberate, and I want to look at all the other rule options as well. There's just a really heightened urgency right now, because there's a lot of fear, be it real or unreal, that there are gonna be some permit requests that are gonna be maybe submitted tomorrow. So maybe if I had assurance from Rumpke that they were not gonna do anything until, say, after the first of the year, you will not submit any permits, then we could go a bit slower. But without an assurance from Rumpke that nothing is going to be, happening right away, I think we need to be, acting quicker.
And not to dominate the question, so pardon.
Well, I have one question. So the rules that you referenced, were they presented at the subcommittee meeting?
Yes, they were.
So those are the rules that,
They're correct.
yeah.
Yeah, and then there was a little debate. We tried to distribute them to everybody, but then there was kind of a, yes, you can, no, you can't, yes, you can, no, you can't. But they are on record, so, and we had hoped that you all would have gotten a copy by now.
Back to the question of urgency, has the subcommittee presented a question to County Prosecutor, Yifeng Chen, regarding the need for urgency? So if Rumpke submitted tomorrow, there's a months-long process for getting plans approved, including a public comment process. If the rules were submitted today, for example, Mr. Riddle came back into the office, submitted the plans to change the landfill, does that immediately prevent us from having rules in the future? Or can our rules still take effect all the way until OEPA takes action?
I think there's a little question on when our rules might take effect and our ability to monitor.
But have we asked legal counsel? That's where I'm most concerned.
You know, at this point, we have been in contact with the prosecutor's office,
Okay.
but we have not gotten any, we were instructed to wait until after the new attorney came on board.
Got it.
So to answer your question directly, no, that question has not been put to legal counsel.
Okay. The only other concern I'll have is I did watch part of the video from last month, and the gentleman who spoke today actually talked about making sure this is a transparent process. And if 2 of my team members sit on the committee and were no part of the discussion for the creation of those rules and did not see them before the meeting, I would challenge that we're not being open. So I would just ask the subcommittee to continue as you work to make sure that you're not excluding members of that committee and, quite frankly, the public. Ms. Davis clearly has an interest. She's been part of these discussions, but it sounds like she was not part of the discussion at the subcommittee of these rules. So
I would challenge that statement, that our meetings are open to the public and very transparent, and everybody's been involved. I don't see any hidden agendas, and everything's been transparent, so I would
the rules
challenge.
were created with everyone's participation? Or how were they? I mean, I just didn't see how they, were created with my team's participation.
The rules were created on my computer, not everybody around my computer. So if you're expecting a group of people, of 10 or 15 people around my computer, no, that's not true. However, the rules were distributed and discussed in an open public meeting. So your description was not accurate.
I didn't hear the discussion.
Can I say something,
Yeah, sure.
Commissioner Kesterman and Commissioner Dreehouse? You've hit on this transparency issue. Apparently Sue and Bob went off and created these rules or pulled them out of another plan. I brought this issue up to the subcommittee meeting. There was no substantial discussion on these, that, I don't even call them rules, I'll call them a document, at the subcommittee level. Neither among us three, among those two maybe, or among Carrie or whoever else has an interest in these rules. So to say there was a transparency on this, to say there was a discussion on it, is completely ludicrous.
You wouldn't allow.
The whole, let me finish. The whole,
No.
the whole process in you bringing this document was that you two went off and created them, and then you come to the policy committee to the subcommittee, and you throw them out. I get it by email. Literally, I didn't see it until the morning of the subcommittee meeting, and I'm expected to be coherent and be able to understand,
And we were asked not to discuss it. We were asked by you not to discuss the document. I was prepared to go through it line by line and discuss it and expected edits. And you were asked us not to do so.
because it had not had any legal review whatsoever. These could have 50% of it, 75% of it, 0% of whatever you want to call it, that will not pass legal muster. And we're going to sit there and talk about things that, while they may point out a need, the district head or the county commissioners there's nothing they can do about it. And that's the whole point. And we have not, this subcommittee has not thoroughly researched. Sue and Bob, I don't know how many citing processes you've been to. I don't know how many actual, real permits you have gone through.
At least a dozen for me.
And which are those, Bob?
I'm not here to be interviewed, but at least a dozen.
I doubt that.
And I don't think that's fair.
Why?
Okay.
I have a 40-year
Yeah,
career.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna stop right there. I'm gonna reiterate what I said. Transparency on this is very much lacking. And just as I've said before, that it was lacking at the subcommittee member. I don't know who else you consulted. I don't know who else you passed out these rules to ahead of time before you presented them to the subcommittee. And you just took what you had in your files and pulled it out. I'm sure that's what it is. Because I know the Warren County plan. You sent me a copy of that as well. So that's my position on it.
Hey, Tony,
I'm sorry.
so Tony and Bob, you both creating a rules, okay? It's all based on the ORC, based on the rules you're creating. Now, the next step, you talked about these rules, for which you're gonna, create, and you come for the adoption to the solid waste committee, eventually it'll go to the commissioners, county commissioners. So, the council you're seeking or going to hire, purely going to advise on this, okay? And what type of rules you're going to create. And if this prosecutor have any kind of, part in play with your council, you're going to hire, subcommittee, or seeking?
I would welcome that, but and she can certainly speak for herself, but I think the default is to the contracted attorney. Is that correct?
We'll be working together.
Yeah.
Right, so can I just clarify, so the county prosecutor decided that it would be best to hire outside counsel because it's such a niche, specialty related to solid waste and landfills, and so
Because
that was an
outside
opinion
counsel
of.
was gonna be hired anyway to help with the plan update coming up next year.
Yeah.
So we decided to tie everything together.
Right, so
That's
so the prosecutor has been part of this process to hire the outside legal counsel, which happened yesterday, it was approved of yesterday at the county commission.
Thanks.
Yes.
I'm not a member of the subcommittee, but as a observer, I came to the subcommittee meeting that's being discussed because as a policy committee meeting, I wanted to hear the discussion of these proposed rules. I was quite upset when all discussion was closed down and the prosecutor's representative had to go out and even
get a ruling on whether they could be shared with Tony. It was like this whole controversy about whether these papers could be shared with anybody. And when she came back with it, it was like, well, as long as they were marked as drafts, they could be declared a public record, and then they could be shared. But by that time, it was the end of the meeting. And so it wasn't that Sue and Bob did not want discussion. They did want discussion. They weren't trying, I don't think, from my observation, to ram these through. They just thought that this was going to be a forum to work through these. And so I just feel that that has to be taken into consideration here. And Tony, I would say your demeanor at that subcommittee was you were trying to close everything down. And you announced that you didn't even believe that maybe rules were necessary. So it was a very contentious meeting in which the object that I thought the subcommittee was supposed to deal with, discussing potential rules, never could happen. Not because they didn't want it, but because it got closed down. So I would say, one of my questions as a policy committee member is, what are the timeline constructions? I heard from John Seymour, the president of Oxbow, in a letter that he shared with everyone, that timing is critical. You know, they believe, and I think Attorney Tamara believes, that if a permit comes in and these rules have not been approved, they will not apply. So that is the urgency that's driving the people in Whitewater Township about it. That's sort of the urgency, I think Bob as a citizen representative and me as a citizen representative feel. We're trying to listen to the concerns of citizens who are really worried about this and trying to figure out how to expedite the process. So I don't know what that all means at this moment, but I think there shouldn't be recriminations about bad intent along the way. I think we're all trying to do what we can to honor the requests, I think legitimate requests, of people from the township.
Commissioner, can I make one comment? Karen, I think step one is completely lacking. And step one is, we talked about whether, well, the first step should be determining, is there a need? And if there is a need, is there a gap? Or is there additional regulations that are needed? What are those? And we have never had that discussion in the subcommittee. We were starting off with what everyone had agreed to was, we need to educate ourselves. We talked about this at previous policy committee meetings. We need to educate ourselves on the whole permitting process to better understand it, to better understand the rules and regulations, to then identify what potential gaps there might be or additional regulations are needed. We have not gone that step. That's number one. Number two, in terms of timeline, the timeline is who you want to believe. We've got all different parties saying this is urgent. We've got other parties saying it's not urgent. Sue, you even sent an email out early on saying we should take a very deliberate and not rush through this. And now nothing's changed from what it was a month ago or 2 months ago, and all of a sudden you flip-flopped on this, and now we're saying, well, it's urgent, we got to get this done right away. So that's where I am on it. We had talked about this, and then all of a sudden, we passed by this whole, I call, education process. We bypassed the legal review, and all of a sudden, we've got a document thrown out that's called draft rules.
So can I just clarify that having sat at the policy committee meeting last time, when we talked about the formation of the subcommittee, expectation, I think, was to dig in a little bit deeper into this issue related to rules and then make recommendations related to rules. And because we don't have them, and the question is, do we need them, should we have them? And that recommendation comes to the policy committee then recommends to the county commission. This is the process that's been established, and that's what we are trying to do here. So I think there are two things driving this consternation. It's timing and a lack of an understanding of whether or not the rules could be in place post request for a permit, right? These are the two things that are driving the anxiety, I think, of both the subcommittee and in part of the policy committee. And so there are two people at the table that can answer, I hope, these questions. One being, do the rules need to be in place prior to a permit being requested? And if they are in place after a permit has been requested, would they apply? That would be for legal counsel. The other question's been posed to Rumpke as to whether or not there is an expectation that any kind of permit would be requested, say by year's end or by the beginning of next year. And if not, that, I think, gives the subcommittee a little bit of a breather, where they can have another meeting, continue to have this conversation. And so I'm wondering if we can get any clarity on either point.
On the legal clarity, that item is being researched right now. It's gonna be researched by our office, and it's probably gonna also be researched by outside counsel. I can't give you that answer right now. That's being researched.
Because we do have a difference of opinion here as to whether or not
I
you
understand.
can or cannot have rules apply after a permit has been
This
issued.
issue just really came up this morning, so.
Well, I know I've been asking this question for a while now, so because we just need to bring some clarity to the
I
process.
understand. Was that submitted in writing to someone else in our office? Because that comes to Harper and Bailey, so
Okay, so, but today you don't have the answer to
I
it?
don't have that answer, no.
Okay.
And that was the question that we had asked in the subcommittee, and actually it asked that we get some really detailed minutes with all the questions, but we haven't seen the minutes yet from the subcommittee meeting either. Because I was hoping to make sure I knew who was gonna answer each question.
Okay.
Commissioner, I need to also bring some clarity on some issues that, Ms. Hurley mentioned. When the rules were originally submitted at the subcommittee meeting last week, there were several issues that were floating around, and that was, there were two members who met and drafted the rules. The chair didn't even know about it. We didn't even see those rules till that moment, okay? So you had that issue going on, because we're supposed to be transparent, right? We had the first meeting, and we were supposed to be still gathering information, and then at the next meeting, rules were being submitted. So with that, the rules were not vetted through our office, or, they weren't even vetted. And also not even vetted through the technical staff with the health district. So, and at that time, my understanding was that there was, open discussion that wanted to be made and comments to be made. And in all fairness, I think those rules needed to be reviewed to see whether or not, originally you had tasked this committee to do research to see whether or not these rules are good for Hamilton County or not. Because my understanding is there's only 21 counties in Ohio that have rules, and are they good for us, or if they're not? And if they aren't good for us, why? And will it open us up for lawsuits and things? And all of those issues haven't even been reviewed or looked at yet. So that's where I was coming.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for asking the question.
Three of them.
Yeah. From an urgency standpoint, to echo on Commissioner Kesterman's point, as far as I know, we have nothing pending to drop, on the agency's door. And if we drop something next week that I'm not familiar with, as Commissioner Kesterman said, there's a whole list of regulations and prescribed public hearings and comment sections and, a period of time that for public input that will be, forced to happen prior to any decision by the agency, particularly EPA. So from that standpoint, I think, Jim Thaxton, Rumpke's counsel submitted a letter today, outlining some of those things, and it has to do with some of the urgency things. He may have called it a red herring, because really there is no sense of, or need for a sense of urgency. As I know it today, we have nothing pending. And my impression of what the subcommittee was charged with, was that also from a, regulatory standpoint, what was the committee, or what are we allowed to do from a regulatory standpoint. I think, Nipong has adequately provided some information on what is allowed and what isn't allowed. And I don't know that that discussion has even been had in either the subcommittee or in this group. We've challenged, our legal counsel with that, and I think she provided it, but I'm not familiar, we didn't talk about it last meeting, maybe the first subcommittee meeting, but it seems like, again, to Mr. Kesterman's point, it'd be very nice to have the legal review on these issues before we get too far out on a limb, that, it should be looked at from that standpoint as well. I don't think we're there yet.
So Larry, in the letter.
We've got a whole, all right, so I'm just gonna start with you guys sitting next to me, and then we're gonna go across the table.
Just in the interest of, making sure everyone's on the same page with Rumpke's plans, I'm privy to other conversations. My understanding is Rumpke's plans at the Bond Road site in the relatively near future, beginning sometime next year, is to make an addition of 22 acres to the landfill. Part of that's to resolve a leachate issue, part of it's to resolve some other issues. Is that an accurate statement? I just wanted to make sure the whole committee hears that same intent.
Right, but the work for next year would be infrastructure work. And there is some work on that, kind of on the south side that we would want to advance. But the majority of that work is already been approved. But we already have the permit to go to 4,000, we had the permit to go to 4,000. We requested to go back to the minimum requirement, and then we have the permit. It's not a question of applying for a new permit to go to expand more landfill. We haven't done that. Now we do have some work planned for infrastructure, that type of thing.
But the plan actually does, the proposal that Rumpke is working through right now, ultimately with OEPA, the next submission potentially is to expand the current limits of waste by 20 acres, plus or minus.
Yes.
And that's to deal with the leachate issue, but it is truly expanding into those new acres. I just want everybody to be on the same page. There is, in the future, a plan to expand the limits of waste at this site. It's not on the table yet, but it is coming. So, I mean, to the question of urgency, there is some, but I just want to balance all of that and make sure everybody hears that, because I don't know that I would have known that without other conversations that I'm privy.
Right. That's the concern, and I don't hear a commitment not to do anything until after the first year. So.
I'll just say, I don't know of anything that we're gonna do this year before the first of the year.
So is that a commitment
I'm
to
usually
not?
privy to those discussions, so.
But can you, or can somebody from Rumpke make that commitment not to submit any permits for any work in Hamilton County until after January 1?
Bill Rumpke is on, Billy Rumpke is on, he might wanna comment, or Jim Thaxton also is on.
He's got his hand up. Bill Rumpke's got his hand up, so why don't we
Okay.
call him Bill Rumpke?
Yeah.
Is that
Everybody hear me?
all urgent?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so, to the earlier conversation there, we do, that 22 acre expansion, to the south would be a new expansion permit. The primary goal of that, to Larry's point, is to fix some of the infrastructure relating to leachate. The exact timeline of that is, kind of still in flux. I can say that I'm not wholly confident that we would be able to get all the work done before January 1st anyway, but I would expect it would be sometime in the next, 3 to 4 months. But I can't really pin down an exact timeline on that. But we've been saying since back in May, all of our communication has been that we plan on putting in a small expansion permit for that little kick out area to fix some of our infrastructure at that site.
Yeah, Karen.
I just want to mention that the letter that we got from Rumpke's attorney today does state as a fact that if a permit is submitted and these rules are not in place, but they come into play while the public hearings are going on, he states as fact that they would apply. I think that's the big issue here under contention. And so, until we are sure either that Rumpke won't submit or some legal counsel tells us that this is, I think my sense is that we have to proceed as if the worst case is true until we get a legal opinion. And so I think we have to keep this process moving. And we can always, my understanding is that we can always reform rules once they're put in place. I mean, whatever is done, it isn't like it's forever. They can be reformed. And so I think that at this moment, we have a certain thing we're facing. We need to deal with that, and maybe there's a lot of other issues that will come up later that we can deal with, and that's fine. But to get something as a protection, I think is imperative at this point, since we don't know what the legal timeline is.
Yeah, and I would add that at our subcommittee meeting, we did hear a briefing from Ohio EPA about the ability to create rules and the process for creation of rules. And the rules that we submit are within the ability to create these rules. That it is within the legal rights of the policy committee and the county commissioners to create these rules, and it fits the descriptions that were presented by Ohio EPA.
Create which rules?
But I'm not a legal, but it fits the description, the second description, and the type of rules presented and the content of the rules fits the authority that was afforded to us by Ohio EPA.
Sounds to me like you're making a legal statement there, Bob, but let me finish, please.
Yeah.
Ohio EPA is very careful. Ohio EPA does not review and approve rules and regulations.
I believe that it fits that description that was presented to us. I also believe, and I know we're getting pretty far extended on this, I would like the policy committee to consider the possibility of the two-step process that I propose, an emergency meeting of the subcommittee to review over these rules. And there was mention of a lot of rules. The only set of rules that has been entertained and presented by the subcommittee or any member of the policy committee is one set of rules here. The others have been presented, and I do have respect of the public, but there's one set of rules that have been presented through the policy committee. And I do wish for the two-step rule of review of the subcommittee and a second policy committee meeting in December so that we can finalize and make a recommendation to the county commissioners.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
may I add that it just seems that right now, if the rules are being accepted or even voted on, it appears that the rules are mainly for Rumpke right now. They're like Rumpke rules. It's supposed to be across the board for any of the landfills. They mentioned waste management earlier, but all the discussions are going towards Rumpke. So it's kind of one-sided right now. I just wanted to make that known.
No, please, no.
I don't agree with that. I think the rules for the subcommittee is making for the whole future, for the residents' purpose, for the county purpose. I don't think so. We name one entity for them.
As an industry representative, there are other organizations within Hamilton County that provide solid waste disposal services, transfer stations, recycling centers, other forms of recycling, and maybe even transfer stations, what may come up. So these folks have been contacted. I know they're aware. Kathy Trent is on the call. I'm sure they would like to have some input into this situation as well. And we'll probably get it, but in a timely manner. So I think rushing the rules, as Tony says, may not be the best thing to do if you want good rules. And having legal counsel take a look at anything we do before we get too far ahead of ourselves would probably be the appropriate measure to take, as opposed to rushing something through because Rumpke may do something. I don't think that's gonna happen. I don't know of anything that's gonna happen. And if something happened on the first of the year, it would take a long time for that process to work its way through the system. So, thank you.
One last question. Yeah. Real quick, I have not obviously seen these, nor have I seen the other three versions that are floating around, but do these rules, many of our communities have compost facilities and other locations, and those facilities ebb and flow as seasons come and interest in composting goes up. Do these have an impact on those types of locations?
No, it does not. It does not.
Absolutely does.
I disagree with that assessment, Bob. This thing you gave us, I think it
Well,
includes all solid waste facilities.
It
That was
includes,
one of the discussions we had, that we weren't gonna target just landfills, or we weren't gonna target just transfer stations.
yeah, it includes multiple, facilities, but at this point, it's unclear if any rule we make affects things in the past or not.
So I'd love to know all those
So we don't
as
know.
part of that.
So literally.
All right, so, okay.
By the definitions, it doesn't include compost.
So, valid statement, so, I mean, we're not even sure that anything that we pass at this moment in time applies back to anything
Right.
anyway, so, because we haven't gotten that legal opinion. So, are we finished with our discussion? I would like to make a recommendation, or does anyone else have anything for, so, I appreciate your comments. We do feel a sense of urgency. The community has reached out to, I don't know how many members here, but I know I've heard from the community, and I feel compelled to respond to the concerns. And we are capable of establishing rules through the policy committee to the Board of County Commissioners. We know we have the capacity, we have not done that in the past. So here we are at this moment in time. We've got a concern from the residents. We have a subcommittee that's been established to kind of vet this before it comes to the policy committee, so that a solid recommendation can be made then to the Board of County Commissioners to keep us in good legal standing, and to respond to the industry concerns and the residents' concerns. So that's where we are. And so I think what Bob has suggested is that we have another subcommittee meeting to further vet what's in front of them, and, you know, leave it to the subcommittee to determine whether it's this set of rules, although I think legal counsel should be reviewing them, and if there's anything else legal counsel should review, that should happen before the subcommittee meets, so that you have that base of knowledge going in. Subcommittee meets, with legal counsel, and then, thoroughly discusses what's in front of you in order to make a recommendation to this committee, and then we in turn make our recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. I do feel like there is a timing issue here, and so I would prefer that if possible, we get this done before the end of the year. I think our last meeting, boy, I wish I knew this, Gina? 16th of December. So I know that's a quick time frame, but I do think there's some urgency to the issue, and I think the citizens deserve to have us move as quickly as we can on something like this. So that's where I'm landing right now. I would welcome discussion on that recommendation, and then, and especially from the subcommittee members. And Bob, actually, I think it was your recommendation, so to be fair, but I want to second that, I suppose. So any discussion on that timeframe?
I second it. Are you making
I'm
motion?
not sure I need to make a motion, other than to, you know, that we've got a clear understanding amongst ourselves as to what the next step is for the subcommittee, because really it's their next move that will kind of dump all the dominoes. And so, the subcommittee would meet then within the next week or two, and then hopefully have something to bring forward to the policy committee at that time.
I would ask, if possible, if Michelle could do a doodle poll of our calendars.
Okay? Yeah. All right, is that,
I had a question.
you
You said
amenable?
December 16th, is that a meeting of the county commissioners?
that's our final meeting of the year, yeah.
So Denise, you probably need to set another meeting of this group if you
That's
want
right,
something.
we would have to have this group meet after the subcommittee meeting. Right. Yeah,
Yes, before the 16th.
that's right, so we've got like a month.
I would like to add that I would just love a real clear understanding of the impacts of these rules. In the first meeting, you had Chuck Bianca of my staff kind of lay out what is a solid waste facility. And it's a lot more than what we always think of. It's compost facilities, and it's the transfer stations, that several of our communities actually have their own transfer stations, so they don't have to take their trucks all the way out to Rumpke and they transfer. I'd love to know the impacts, because some of our communities the impact on a small community might be very different than on a large landfill. And then the other piece to that is, look at the broader picture. We're talking a lot about Bond Road, but we need to think about the entire county. So just make sure that we all have a better understanding of that, would be my ask.
It might be helpful, depending on what the subcommittee decides to take up by way of rules, that we all receive them.
That would be helpful.
So that and I know that is not something you would necessarily do, but, given the
That's fine.
timing here, I think, as you review things in the subcommittee, if you could give us advanced, rules, that would be very helpful.
That would be great,
Yeah,
yeah.
I feel like you feel a little behind the eight ball.
Would it be wise to distribute after the attorney reviews, because there might be edits from the attorney?
Yeah, well, as it comes,
Mhm,
right,
yeah.
the more information, the
Okay.
better, as far as I'm concerned.
And why are we dismissing the other 3 sets of, pieces of that I would love to know,
Exactly,
today's rules, are they good, are they bad, what's included? All of that's really what I would love to have.
And have the legal counsel vet them all.
Yes.
I think,
That's a good idea.
And then again, we do have a subcommittee for a reason. And so, as you all determine, we've got 4 sets of rules, which ones do you think are most appropriate? You've got one already that you are having vetted. Maybe, you take a look at the other ones and decide, to get legal review. And then we are privy to that legal review as it happens.
I like that.
Because we don't have any rules right now. Others do, but we do not, so. Okay, so, all right, are we all amiable to that approach? Okay, yeah, all right, very good, thank you. And we'll leave it to you to schedule, and then we will in turn schedule a meeting. Okay, very good. All right, thank you. All right, the next, item is the Assistant Solid Waste Manager.
And I can take that. So currently, we have 7 full-time solid waste staff that are funded 100% through the solid waste department. We've added a few staff over the last year. We've added some programs over the last year. And I directly supervise 6 staff members. So it is not ideal for one person to directly supervise 6 staff members in addition to everything else I do. So in the past, we have had an assistant solid waste manager. And so what we are thinking is if we add an assistant solid waste manager, that position would take on 2 or 3 of the managing of the solid waste staff, and then I would supervise the other staff. How that's exactly split up is we're not sure yet. I bring this up now because this is an addition to our budget from what we put together in June and the policy committee approved in July. So this is something that we added to the budget to go before the board, but I really want your feedback. If you think that this is a bad idea, we won't move forward with posting this position. But if you approve of this position, then we would hire this position in 2022. So I'm really looking for your feedback. If you'd like to pass a resolution, that would be great as well.
Yeah.
So, I would love an assistant too. With that, my only concern is that we're adding a lot of staff now, that we just added another position in July, and it wasn't anticipated when we added that position was gonna necessitate another position. And while we have the money right now, I've been around when we didn't have much money on leaner years, and if we add these positions, then we're stuck with potential layoffs, which I would really hate for something like that to happen. And having been on this policy committee for a number of years, I'm a little concerned that our personnel budget is now higher than our RRI budget. That has never happened, that personnel has grown so massive that we spend over $903,000 on personnel, and yet the RRI community program is stalled at $900,000, and that was never restored. So, but again, I think where we should go with this is, doing a position audit, because she's got a lot of work on her plate right now. And so I think that the solid waste district manager position should be audited, for the workload. We have to really think, is the assistant, manager more important than the new position that was added, or can the current staff load this to give Michelle more help. But I really, I'd like to know what the 5-year cost of this new position is, because it's gonna really, it's gonna put the budget out of whack in a bad year. Having the, changing the table of organization, you know, with two new full-time staff members with benefits, for eternity, unless they're ugly layoffs. So, I would like to see a position audit and a 5-year analysis of that cost.
Any other comments?
So can you give me some details on, because I've only been on and off the policy committee, haven't been on it full-time, continuously. What were the years that the policy, or the district had to do cutbacks?
There were, when was it, when we cut the, there have been 2 cycles, I can't remember the years exactly, but there were a couple years where we had to cut back the RRI and cut back a lot of programming. And we've got a lot of money right now. That's not a problem. We could do it 1 year. I just hate the idea that we're changing the table of organization for eternity. And they already, and it's just much bigger than it used to be when I was here. I worked on staff here for 8 years. And so now they have, 9 part-time staff, or no, 10 positions that we pay 50%, and 8 positions that we pay 100%. Is that right? Let me get my notes.
Michelle, do you know the answer to this?
Yeah, we pay 7 positions, 100%. And the part-time, it's not like we have part-time staff. We are paying for part of environmental services staff, which is something that we've always done. For example, we pay for a percentage of our director, Brad Johnson. We pay for the receptionists. We pay for part of Ally, the financial person. So we pay for part of their positions, and that's something we've always done.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Support services.
I think that's sort of like, part-time staff, but, my overview on this is that the district has many more programs than it did in the past. Those have gradually grown over the years. And so it kind of, another program is added, another program is added, another program is added. We're doing grants differently than we did before. We got more different grant programs. We still have continued with the RRI program, which incidentally I'm extremely familiar with since I instituted that and helping the districts put that together with the first solid waste management plan. And I think that the staff, at the same time, they're doing other things that were not done before, which is going back and actually evaluating each program and saying, how can we improve these programs? They're constantly going back, I think, questioning themselves about, we've got this program, is it worth it? Can we make improvements? There's a lot more going on than there have been in the past years, with the solid waste district as well. And we've done organics initiatives. There's been a number of other initiatives that have come about. Compost training has been in place for a while, but that's expanded as well. So there's just so many more programs than where we were before.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, also, having looked over the documents that Michelle sent about household waste issues and recycling infrastructure, I was really taken by the gap analysis, throughout those. I mean, they're really important, and they point the way to even more staff involvement. And so, we can't wait, until we get this 5-year plan completely done, I don't think. I mean, there's some urgency from Michelle, but it seems to me that we're going to have even more demands on staff if we go into this 5-year planning process with the idea that we want to make improvements and we want to fill some of the gaps that have been identified. So I would say to maybe.
It's a catch-22.
It is.
Because
it definitely
you
is.
want to expand, but it will mean that either, programs will be cut in the lean years or somebody will have to get laid off.
If I could.
Or you increase fees.
Or we increase fees, yes.
All right,
If I
great.
could add, coming from an agency that has literally been crushed over the last 18 months, having the necessary support to do your job is critical. And I have, I've literally grown my agency. We're 100 people when I started, and we're 150 now, plus another 70 or 25 nurses and contractors. Without that team, we would not have been able to respond. And so I bring that analogy up. If they're saying they're busy, they have the funding now, sometimes you have to make decisions to support staff before you lose valuable resources. People quit when they're not well supported. And so I fully support the proposal. It is a hard decision. I know at some point I may not have funding to support 150 people at the health district, but I needed the help. And I suspect if Michelle's coming to this committee asking for help, it's because she needs it. So I support it.
Yeah, just a quick point, and I somewhat concur with Karen and with Greg, and somewhat disagree with Sue on this one. I do support the higher request, in the support and management of staff, particularly because of the problems identified and the increased programming that's identified in the reports that were shared with us and are on the agenda later on. And they demand some programmatic changes and additional staff, perhaps, or staff time and attention. And so I do support this. I would add a different, unique perspective. Earlier in the agenda, there was a mention of revenues to the district from the Rumpke landfill, and I always cringe at that report, because they're ever increasing revenues to the district, and I feel one of the missions of this district is to reduce revenues, not to increase revenues.
From tipping
fees, because I believe one of our missions is to reduce waste, going to a landfill and increase that waste to recycling programs. So I do cringe at that report every time. It's a counter message to the revenues that are needed to support these programs. But besides that counter message, I do believe that I support this request.
Okay, great. Any other discussion? All right, I'm gonna entertain a motion to approve of Michelle's recommendation.
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. We have one opposed? No. Any, abstentions? All right, motion passes, Michelle. All right, we're gonna move on to informational items, household hazardous product collection update.
I will just quickly say that we had an excellent household hazardous waste event on October 23rd. It went very smoothly, no issues, and huge kudos to Cher Mooring, who's in the room, for organizing such a flawless event, and for all the staff who pitched in, came in on their Saturday and helped out. We did just recently learn that we collected 47.69 tons of material, and we had 1,283 households attend. We actually had over 1,800 households registered, and only 1,283 showed up. So we're not sure what happened there, but Cher Mooring's in the room. I'm sure if Cher, if you have anything else to add, or if you have any questions, I'm sure she can answer them.
Any questions? Anything to add?
I just have one, any thoughts about the difference between the number that actually registered and actually showed up? Any sense that, for instance, while it was almost 1,300 households showed up, that maybe some households actually got together and one person brought in what might be waste out of 2 households or 3 households? Anything like that?
No,
Okay.
we sent out, reminders, I think a few days, and then again the day before. We had some people call us and cancel, so we knew that there was I think it was down to I think we had about 100 people call and cancel, so we expected some people not to show, but yeah, it was a lot higher this year than it was previously.
Yeah. Do you recall, was the weather good that day, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was a great day.
100 out of how many? What was the total?
The number of people who registered was
that showed up, was, 1,283.
Yeah.
The previous year, we had, more people register than show up also, but it wasn't that big of a difference, so we were a little surprised at that.
What do you attribute it to?
No idea.
Okay. I'm one of the people who registered and didn't show up.
Oh,
I had a contract.
That's my spot.
Well, no, I called and I talked to Susan, I said, I can't make it, I've got a contractor who rescheduled on me. Please give my spot to somebody else.
I've had a few calls for COVID,
COVID. It's always COVID. All right, okay, thank you, appreciate that. All right, the next item, Hamilton County Solid Waste Plan Update.
Yes, so I did send out 2 different analyses. I'm going to do a short presentation on those. In other solid waste plan update news, we have been working with our DEI consultant, Redcon. They are evaluating 5 of our program areas, and we've not gotten any results from that yet, but that's ongoing. We are also working with our solid waste consultant, Karen Lucan with EESI. She's putting together some stakeholder input sessions right now. So we will be having 2 different community sessions the first week of December, which Gage is going to be, or I think he did just send out a notice about. So we're trying to get input on before we start writing, and then we'll get input afterward as well. So I'm going to try to share my screen. It looks like I have too many screens open.
Yes, very, very.
Do that. There we are. So I just have a quick presentation about the two analyses that I sent you that are closest to complete, I guess is what I would call them. Can you see that presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. I will say that while I would love discussion now and have a few questions to prompt discussion, certainly after you review them, you have more ideas or things that you want to add. We have plenty of time to add those ideas in. So feel free to send me an email, a week from now or a month from now, that's fine. So the first analysis that we did was the residential recycling infrastructure analysis. And just a few quick facts, we have 98% of residents in Hamilton County have access to curbside recycling in some form, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Our diversion rate in 2020 was 17.54%, which is the lowest of the 3 sectors. So if you look at commercial, it's higher than that, industrial is higher, but typically residential is lower than the other 2. In 2020, we recycled, the residents of Hamilton County recycled a little over 41,000 tons and composted a little over 17,000 tons. So we did a 2018 study of residential waste going to the landfill, and this is what residents are throwing away. Now, one of our analysis in the future is going to be a diversion analysis where we really dig deep into these numbers. So I'm not going to go too much into it right now, but I do want to let you know we took that into consideration. When you look at the recycling program types in Hamilton County, we have 32 communities, so the majority have non-subscription. And what that means is that they are either contract for curbside recycling on behalf of their residents, or they haul it themselves. We actually have 2 communities who do that. 15 communities have subscription recycling, which means their residents pay an extra fee for that. And then we have 1 community, which is the city of Cheviot, which only has drop-off. They don't have a curbside recycling option. I will say these numbers just changed last night. The city of Reading adopted a curbside recycling program. So these numbers will change slightly, which is great. So congrats to the city of Reading. So when we look at, when we break down the pounds per resident recycled, you can see that those communities that offer automatic recycling to their residents have higher participation. They definitely yield more pounds per resident of recyclables. So that is really, from a diversion standpoint, the ideal program to go for. So we offered a few ideas for improvements to the infrastructure. One is to increase drop-off access. We find that drop-offs are really important for multifamily residents. And that, so not all residents have access to curbside. So getting that, increasing that drop-off access is key. And then improving the signage at the drop-offs, making sure that the containers have the right signs, but also Gage will work with the community and offer them free sandwich boards, right, to improve what to kind of change up what the residents are seeing and improve that. We also we could offer technical assistance to communities to improve the placement. So say if the recycling drop-off is at a school, it might get more usage than if it is tucked away in a park where people aren't going, or maybe the park is really well used. So offering that technical assistance could be really helpful. The other area, which has been a focus, is curbside recycling improvement. So our one community that has, just drop-off access, working with them to try to get curbside, we can help them. Obviously, we can't force them, but we can help them with make them aware of grants that are available. We can certainly try to work with them to make that happen. Then we have those communities have subscription and trying to get them, just like we did with Reading, to go to automatic curbside recycling. And there are what we would consider low-hanging fruit in that category. So there are a lot of communities still who contract for waste and not for recycling. So really trying to work with those communities to add curbside recycling for their residents to their contracts. And then really just offering technical assistance, community education to help them improve their existing programs. So that could be workshops, target community outreach. And then the other idea that is in there, which is a little out there, would be a single fee model. So this is something Warren County does, where if you have a resident in Warren County, all residents have access to curbside recycling in the same fee as garbage. So there's a few communities where Rumpke has offered this, such as like Green Township, Anderson Township, but this would be something that we could try to do countywide. It would require cooperation of the haulers who are offering that service. So I'm going to pause for a minute and before I get into the difficult to manage waste streams, and I've got these questions up here. I'm not going to read them to you, but I really love your, initial reaction to the residential infrastructure. Is there something else you'd like us to kind of dive into on this and include? Are there things that I said that you're like, yes, that's a great idea? And I can no longer see you, so you'll just have to speak up.
Michelle, this is Tony Napuccio. On your pie chart, you showed subscription, non-subscription communities. Were there many communities that had, also had drop-offs, and whether they were subscription or non-subscription? Were they kind of a dual system?
Absolutely. There's a lot of communities who, even though they have non-subscription recycling, they still also offer drop-offs. And we encourage that because you have residents who are multifamily properties who aren't covered by that curbside program. But then also sometimes, I see it, you get a big delivery, you've got a lot of cardboard. If you can bring that material to a drop off, it's a lot easier than trying to fit it all into your cart. So we do find that supplementing curbside with drop offs is helpful.
I'll ask you another, this is really really digging into the weeds. As you know, greenhouse gas emissions are a big topic these days. And when you have curbside recycling, you obviously are running another truck down the street, just the way it is, fact of life. And have you seen anything where anyone's looked at, at least in theory, the idea behind that is you have recycling going on, therefore you're going to have less waste collections going on. And in theory, again, at least your waste collection vehicles should be less I guess, the number would decrease as you increase the number of your, recycling vehicles. And have you seen anything, any kind of studies that shows where's that, you know, what's the impact, basically saying, if I go to even mandatory recycling, curbside recycling programs, are we really seeing, but also an overall reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from the vehicles?
Absolutely, you are. So Ohio EPA, or not Ohio, I'm sorry, US EPA has really delved into that and measured that, and they have what they call the WARM model. So they can show there's so much greenhouse gas impact of making a product, especially a new product out of virgin materials, that you really see a benefit by using, for example, it takes 95% less energy to make a new aluminum can out of a existing can versus, mining the bauxite from the earth. So there is definitely a positive greenhouse gas impact. So you reduce your greenhouse gases through curbside recycling, and US EPA has done life cycle analysis to show that. And so we can actually quantify it. And then every year we put the community's numbers through that model and actually let them know how much greenhouse gases they have saved by the tons that they have diverted.
What about looking at the various collection vehicles? So I understand what you just said about the recycling, getting materials back into the recycle mode, but what about the vehicles themselves? Are we creating more emissions because you haven't used more vehicles to pick up the same amount of waste or recycling?
Right, and US EPA takes that into consideration in their life cycle analysis. And there's even, I believe in the model, you can put in whether the vehicles are natural gas or, gasoline. And you can put in also, when you're comparing it to the landfill, does the landfill recover methane? So they do consider that in their life cycle analysis.
I'll ask one more question. I'm sorry, these are pretty detailed, but so if you had to choose based on curbside versus drop-off, has there been any study showing that drop-off recycling decreases the vehicle emissions because you are supposedly you'd have to run less collection vehicles down the street? Number one, and number two, that at least the drop-off centers I'm familiar with they're usually located where people are driving by them anyway. It's not a specific destination for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have not seen a study like that, but that would be interesting to look into. I will.
Yield less volume.
Okay, those are just some thoughts I had.
Less volume.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, so Tony, to your point about, the vehicle, extra vehicle, I mean, here's the thing, I live in a community that has subscriptions. And so Rumpke has to run the recycling truck through all the streets of my community of 350 people, even though only 80 subscribe. So if all 300 people were recycling, it wouldn't add that much the same truck is going through. Right. So I think that's something to consider.
But it's not quite that simple, because as you improve your the trucks have a certain capacity. And so it's like, okay, if you're increasing recycling, you're gonna have more recycling trucks on the road.
Right.
At the same time, your number of waste collection trucks you should be reducing. That's
Yeah, but I'm just saying, the truck that goes through our neighborhood is not full.
I agree with you, yeah, that they can run.
So I'm just saying, it's not quite either
So a
or.
recycling vehicle, maybe they can do 800 households in a day, whereas your trash collection might only be able to do 400. The ideal situation would be almost to flip those the other way around. So that's one thing. The other thing I've seen, at least in my community, is we cannot keep up with servicing the drop-offs. And I mean, there's gotta be over a dozen recycling containers, and most recently they just brought in 2 more big roll-offs. They are constantly being serviced, and that's why I asked the question about the drop-off, because it's in an extremely convenient location. It's open 24/7, and so when people are driving by, and it's in a shopping area, it's a major thoroughway, et cetera, et cetera. So that really, and I see all that, and I can tell you the subscription services there are practically zero.
Yeah, I do have some suggestions for Michelle. Just a quick note for Tony's discussion. There are economic studies for the last 10 years on curbside collection and the economic models versus waste collection. And the city of Fresno's a model for the EPA. For every 3 recycling trucks put on the road, 2 trash trucks are taken off. And that's been proven economic. And the city of Austin is a model that EPA has used too. And I operated both of those programs in the past. But getting to Michelle's questions, I would suggest that we look at the non-subscription areas and work with model language for their next contracts to pair the recycling with the waste for the subscription and offer contract language. I recognize those are specific contracts that the either the township is engaged in or their individual subscriptions that the residents engage in, but maybe some model contract language. I worked with Washtenaw County in Ann Arbor, Michigan, with that concept, and it worked quite well. I also recommend requiring countywide, and I don't think this is in place, that every single-family residential unit be required to contract for waste service. There are gaps in the county where single-family units are not contracting for waste service if their community does not contract for waste service. And that is causing a theft of service in the business community. These individual single-family households are taking their trash and going to a waste dumpster in a shopping center and dumping their trash in a commercial bin, like a Target or a Walmart or someplace. And they do not contract and pay for their waste disposal. If they don't take the convenience to put it in their car and travel, they will use their neighbor's trash can. And that is causing some anger among their neighborhood. But they simply do not contract for waste. And I think there should be a countywide rule for every single family,
Every structure.
Every
yeah.
structure.
Every structure should have a contract for waste.
Yes.
We're having that in the city of Cincinnati where people, they don't wanna, we only provide trash service up to 4 families, so those who live in rental properties are overloading our corner cans with household trash, and then they're either theft of service at a neighborhood dumpster, or they're just, given Officer Peak work.
I was just about to say, in Anderson Township, I believe that's what Tony was talking about, I think there's 18 or 19 of those recycling bins, and our District 5 facility is literally a shared driveway.
Yeah.
It does not matter. On Monday morning, unfortunately, Anderson Township, at least an hour, their maintenance guys are cleaning up what is left on the ground. I know that Anderson Township is involved with getting camera systems, and I can tell you, unfortunately, the belief is also that it's coming from the county next door adjacent, because they got rid of all of theirs next door, and it's convenient right there. So, I'm not blaming, but I'm just saying that that's exactly right. There's a lot of folks that, utilize those as just a dump location for garbage, and then it contaminates the complete recycling container.
Yeah, we're getting, and I have people, with recycle carts who get tagged for garbage, and they're like, where'd that garbage come from? And it's like, a neighbor threw a big bag of garbage into the recycling container.
And Michelle, if we deal with this waste service, make a unified waste service rule, it's an opportunity to pair recycling with waste. There's an opportunity there.
Yeah.
So, Michelle, in a community where the community is not paying for the recycling service, but individuals have to do that themselves, I assume the barrier is cost.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's
So,
correct.
can you help me better understand, I know communities vary in size. What is a typical argument to not have a community contract themselves? Like, how much are we talking about?
Okay, so I'll answer your question in two parts. We've done focus groups, and so residents have expressed that this is real words we've heard. Rumpke's making so much money on this recycling. Why should I have to pay $2 a month for it? So that's the residents' feeling on it. But and that's not my view by any means. But from a community standpoint, we have heard a lot of communities, some communities have switched. For example, Colerain Township, Springfield Township, both used to be subscription. Now they are contracting out on behalf of their residents, and they're saving their residents quite a bit of money. Some communities really believe that they should not step into that, and their residents want to be able to have freedom to choose whichever hauler they want. And from that perspective, the community itself does not want to step into that space. For those communities who contract for waste but not recycling, they're most often trying to save their residents money. And so we usually work with those communities. We've worked with Sharonville, Silverton, and now most recently Reading, who were in that same situation. And we find ways such as making every other week recycling, having a big recycling cart. So you're doing half the number of pickups. And so it makes it more cost effective. So we've worked with them on that, and they've been able to absorb the cost, but it's usually a cost issue.
Right, but give me an estimate of what the cost is.
So we have, I could send you a spreadsheet of all of the communities. It's usually about $350 a month, sometimes lower than that per household. I know, Sue, you have a really good rate in the city of Cincinnati because it's so large. Do you recall exactly what your per household rate is?
For recycling, it's about $2.48.
Could you just, so not to prolong this, could you just send me the information, the spreadsheet?
Absolutely.
Can I ask one, Sue, does the city invoice separately for recycling, or is that just your contract, through your contract?
Well, we don't charge the residents.
Right.
We pay for it out of the general fund for both trash and for recycling.
But your contract winds up coming out to $2.50.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I have one more thought too on this particular document, and that is a unified recycling message countywide. Michelle and the city of Cincinnati through Sue and I have had discussions about this. Residential, business community, schools, the airport, everything throughout the community, just a unified recycling message. And Rumpke's been involved in this discussion through Molly, and it would benefit everybody if we can just unify these messages completely throughout the county.
Yeah, and to Rumpke's credit, they actually had a meeting just a couple of weeks ago. We're bringing together all the communities and briefing them on the new technology and making sure they all know to use the same messaging. And Molly is actually checking out people's websites, making sure that they're doing right.
That's great.
So,
That's great.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, so on the, so do you agree we have a strong recycling infrastructure? And I would just put a little asterisk next to that we have an amazing infrastructure for people who own their homes and have a car. We do not have a strong residential recycling infrastructure for people who rent. And so just for an example, we have over, for 5-family and above structures, just in the city of Cincinnati, we have 2,443 structures that do not have recycling carts. And these on average have about 10 units, so that's 26,342 that no longer have a recycling cart because the property manager won't allow it. They are eligible. Anyone can get a recycling cart in the city of Cincinnati if they can get it to the curb without garbage. There are just so many barriers in multifamily situations to get it to the curb. Who's gonna do it? And second, who's gonna make sure that no bozo dumped in it, you know? And so those are the barriers in multifamily. And so there are over 30,000 families in the city of Cincinnati who do not have access to recycling. And then also, in the 1 to 4 family category, where we deliver carts, we have over 21,000 households who have ordered them removed, because somebody, used it for trash at some point. So there we have 30,000 families in our 5 family and above category, and we have 21,000 in our 1 to 4 who do not have access to recycling because of, what do we need to improve? Infrastructure for multifamily.
And just to address that, multifamily is considered part of our business structure because that's how it's looked at in our business analysis. So we will be diving really deep into the multifamily, and the multifamily is another one that both of our consultants, our solid waste consultant and our DEI consultant, are looking into. So we'll have definitely much more details about multifamily improvements to come.
Can you clarify that too? I missed it. So 1 to 4 units, does the city provide recycling for them or not?
Yes,
Okay.
we provide, there's opportunity, like if somebody in a 4 family that calls,
Okay.
we're gonna say, who's gonna take it to the curb, and does the property manager approve of that? And if the property manager won't agree to where the cart will go or to agree to set it out, then we don't deliver it.
I'm sorry to get into these details.
Yeah.
The other question I had real quick, so above 5, you do or do not? The city?
So again, it doesn't matter how many.
Okay.
In our when we delivered our fleet, we automatically delivered to the 1 to 4 family.
Okay.
But the 5 and above, they have to opt in.
Okay.
They have to call us and they have to say, yeah, I'll get it to the curb without garbage.
And when you say rental units, are you talking rental or multifamily? Because
I'm saying multifamily.
Okay, so that would include condo associations and
Correct.
Yeah. This will be my last question, I promise. Do you have data that shows that condo associations are generally more receptive to having recycling or not?
I don't have data on it. Anecdotally, I work with a number of condo associations to get it to work. They're all a little quirky,
That's a kind way of saying it.
but yeah, there are the condo associations. We've been able to get them into the program.
And my experience, I have very little experience with the condo associations, is that the property management companies generally don't like to deal with it.
Exactly. So a property manager, if they're like, essentially, hey, you want more work? No, thank you.
Okay.
And so that's why, there are 50,000 families that don't have access to recycling because their property manager said no.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Commissioner.
No, you're fine. Anybody else? Okay, thanks, Michelle. All right, next time, sorry.
I'm sorry, I only got through the residential recycling and I realize we're running out of time. So if you'd like, I can send the difficult to manage waste stream analysis PowerPoint to everyone. And if you have questions, certainly you can just let me know.
Thank you. Sorry about that. All right, next is Beyond 34 update.
I'm sorry, I can only hear you. I've lost the video somehow, but I will give a quick update on that. And then Bob, if you have anything to add, feel free to jump in. So this was an item that Karen had requested at the last meeting. Out of the Beyond 34, I need to stop sharing. Oh, there you are. Out of the Beyond 34 initiative, there were three working groups that were formed. One was a business working group, the other was a residential recycling and outreach group, and then the third was the organics group. And so the business group, Mary Krupenbaker from our office has been working on a waste audit toolkit, which will be a really really useful tool that'll have all the different, how to do a waste audit, here are the different types of audits, we've had videos incorporated. So she has been working on that. I think the plan was to get that by the end of the year. The residential recycling working group has kind of fallen flat. The hope at the last meeting was to be able to get input from the organizations that were involved. I think P&G and Coca-Cola were going to be able to give input on the residential recycling campaigns that we developed. So unfortunately, we've not developed any campaigns since that moment, but we're working on that now. So hopefully we get that input. The other group was the organics. And so that group was led by Robin Henderson from the city of Cincinnati and Jenny Lohman in our office. Jenny retired in June. So Robin has been working on those initiatives. They align really closely to the Great Lakes cohort initiatives with NRDC that they're involved in. So there's been a lot of work on especially food rescue infrastructure. So that's kind of my quick update, Bob. I don't know if you have anything else to add on that.
I think you did a great job. The Beyond 34 is no longer funded through the chamber. There's no funding channels and grants at the moment. But I do envision that the three working groups that you mentioned could gain funding through the infrastructure dollars that were approved through Congress. And so we could regenerate these projects as funding becomes available. And that was the stopping point of our discussions in the past with funding opportunities. So we could, if there is interest in the locality for any of these working groups to be regenerated in the near future, we could look at those infrastructure dollars for funding.
Bob, I think Swana was pushing for some of those dollars to get into the recycling.
Yeah, I've been involved with the National Recycling Coalition tracking those dollars as well. The dollars will be available sometime in June or July if EPA moves quickly on the rule development. And I've been following Swana and ISRI on their communications as well, yes.
Great. Any other comments? Okay. Next item, third quarter performance measures.
And I have no update on that. You can just review it. If you have any questions, let me know.
Okay. And then the next one is environmental enforcement program.
And I believe you have Deputy Peak. I think I can kind of see you there in the background. We have the report. I'm not sure if you have any questions for him.
Any questions for the deputy? Not today. All right. Wow. A lot of that too.
I got one question.
Yeah.
Where is that camera installed over there in the, I think Chuck helped us put the camera really working, which is through the solid waste committee. Outstanding, you know, place in at Dollar General, Pippin, Madam Road, people dumping like unbelievable stuff everywhere. And it's big concern. I think the camera is very good. The camera, direct access to your camera police cruiser. I think we are trying to spend more money to buy more cameras where the neighborhood, a lot of neighborhoods, where there's a dumping grounds, especially East Miami Road with other dumping ground, and a lot of places, vacant buildings, businesses, a lot of business, they go behind the building, dumping it. I think that's a monumental project that you guys created, that the cameras, maybe try to buy more cameras, that'd be great. And you in Colerain Township, we hired enforcement officers, and Brian, you worked a very good job working with the enforcement. I think that's the biggest deterrent for people to dumping all of the tires and all kinds of illegal stuff.
More cameras are in the health district budget.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
That's
Continuing to add, only one camera has been stolen so far.
really, and people don't know where the camera is,
They don't.
you know? I call Chuck and where the camera is, hey, go and see it, and biggest deterrent thing, and
Out here.
yeah, yes, please try to buy more cameras.
Yep.
Thank you.
I would like to add to that, I'm always looking for money, and the infrastructure dollars that were passed, they have a Save Our Seas grant funds to the EPA that are specifically targeted for litter that ends in the streams that eventually lead to the oceans. And they're targeted grant funds, and I believe that litter will be targeted for grant funding that we could grab hold of. And there was a fantastic article in the Cincinnati Enquirer recently on the litter in the Cincinnati and Hamilton County. And I think those grant funds, maybe 6, 8, 9 months from now, will be available for cameras and other litter abatement activities. And I think we should be looking for those.
There you go.
There you go.
Tell our grant writers.
All right, thank you. 2021 awards.
So I'd like to hand this one over to Gage Bradford. He and Abby from our office are working on the awards, but Gage, do you have anything you want to report on that?
Can everyone hear me loud and clear?
Yeah.
Wonderful. So just briefly, as COVID still lingers around, it will be another year of us not being able to have our typical in-person ceremony for these awards. So instead of that, we're going to be doing individual social media spotlights and write-ups that will begin at the turn of the year for each individual winner. And lastly, the physical awards that we're going to be giving out are coming from a local business that is actually 513 Green Business Certified, which is a new certificate through our office, which is nice to see that relationship come full circle, especially when it comes to how we spend our money. So that's the quick rundown of this year's plan for the awards. Happy to take questions, but I will not reveal any of the winners.
Any questions? All right, thank you for the update. Next agenda item is tentative future agenda items. I'll open it up to the floor. Yeah.
I'd be interested, sometime in the future, wherever it fits, methane emissions from all the landfills in the county, just an update on our accounting of the methane emissions and a volumes report. I know it's reported to Ohio EPA. I'd like to have some discussion on that.
Okay.
Bob, could we expand that to methane emissions in general?
Yeah.
Versus
I think that's a good idea.
All right, anybody else? All right, sounds like our next agenda will be a short one. Of course, that's not true. All right, policy committee members' comments. Anybody comments for the good of the cause? No.
We've had lots of comments today.
Yeah. Is that not typical, Greg? Yeah, I'm accustomed to running meetings where everybody gets to participate when the topic is in front of us, so hopefully that's helpful. All right, updating policy committee meetings, upcoming policy committee meetings. So, Michelle, we have said we want to have a policy committee meeting following the subcommittee meeting in December, presumably. So that's in the offing. And then I see that the next regularly scheduled meeting is Wednesday, January 19th, here in this room. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
So we'll get that meeting and then another potential meeting here within the next 2 weeks. All right. Is there anything else to come before the body? I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Very good. Thank you.